Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Shirley and today I wanted to talk about Marantas. Now I've used Marantas in various videos in the past, but I haven't actually done a care video on Marantas. I've done videos on Calatheas, and if you want to have a look at those, there should be a tag either above me or in the comments below, the description below. But I haven't done one on the care of Marantas, and it's probably because I've got several Marantas and I haven't really had any problems with them. Just one or two, and I'll come to that as I go along. Now, Marantas are seen by a lot of people as being delicate plants. Now, that's because perhaps they can have a browning on the edge of their leaves sometimes, but there is ways of stopping that, and I'll get to that as I go along. They are tropical plants, and they are meant to be in warm climates. South America, the West Indies, and in forests. They like to be in that kind of environment. So I think what we'll do is I'll just get straight on now and explain what I do and what I understand about Marantas in the years that I've had them. And then, you might hear one or two things that I say that you didn't know, or you want to try yourself. So first of all, we usually talk about light. Now, light, of course, is essential, but they are forest plants as such. So they do tend to have mottled light, but it isn't exactly dark. So what you want to do is you want to keep them in a place where they have some light from the windows, but not necessarily right up against them, because you'll find that if you get a sunny moment, you're going to do something, you're going to scorch, dry out, whatever, those leaves. So don't think of them as a windowsill plant, because they're not. Keep them a little ways away from your window, but make sure that they've got some light around them that is adequate. They're not the sort of plant that you put in your living room table and then forget about them, because that just would not have enough light from those windows. Your living room is fairly big. The coffee table would be somewhere in the middle. They wouldn't get enough light. So you want to get somewhere towards the window, but not up against it. Okay. So I would say that. You can use grow lights if you want to. But I wouldn't have them too close to a grow light, because basically their leaves are the sort that want to keep the moisture in. So these plants are beautiful. They are patterned. They have lots of different shades within them. There are several different ones that you can buy. One of my favourite is lemon lime. I like the gold and the green. It almost looks like gold lines between velvety, limey green, and it's quite vibrant from another side of the room when you walk in, and I really like that. This one is quite close to it, actually. It's quite similar. This is Maranta light vein. I always get it mixed up, but it's light vein, and it has some little spots of chocolate. And I have noticed, I have shown people in the different videos this particular one, but a bigger version of it, and I showed all these lovely little chocolate spots. Now, watering is essential, obviously, for all plants, but this one, you want to keep the soil sort of moist. You can let it go a couple of days, do that. I would say once a week, the usual thing, once a week. But if we've got some hot weather, or you've had the radiators on in the winter a lot and it's near a radiator, well, think twice, because they must not get dried out too much. So try to keep your soil fairly moist, but do not let it stay fully soggy wet. It's just not going to work with your Maranta. Now, you can mist your Marantas in, the depths of winter when you've got a fire or radiators. You could think about that. Definitely, though, perhaps in the summer, once in a while, a fine mist. That would be quite nice for it. They come from, humid climates. They have this sort of foresty, humid, dewy air, perhaps in the mornings, and they need that kind of thing. That they're not absolutely terrible about that. You don't have to worry about keeping them in a cabinet or keeping them covered up or anything like that. They're fine. But just keep it in mind that they are not meant to be dried out, and therefore they're not meant either to be, got at by too much close lights or sun. So if we keep them sort of moist, give them a spray now and again, you'll probably find you'll have no problem. And they grow quite quickly, both in their leaf size, and they can get fairly big, and in their stalk size. So we'll come to that in a little bit as well. Now, I've covered watering, I've covered misting. I would say that when you water, don't think in terms of pour with the water and filling it up, really well like that. I mean, just don't do it. Just give it, in your mind, kind of like just under half a pot's amount of water. So, just pour it till you sort of a couple of times like that, and then I would leave it. Do not stay there, because some people tell you to really soak your plant and then leave it alone for days and days and days. I don't agree with that. The plant just needs a drink. It does not need to be saturated, and especially this one, the roots will not be happy. So don't do that. Just think in terms of a sort of an inch or two, just a little bit of water around the top there, and just monitor it if you've got those radiators going endlessly, or you've got, really hot sunny days. Do not put them in a hanging basket. I don't advise it, because I was saying in my other video on Hoyas, it's all right and well and good putting them in hanging baskets, and hanging baskets are really lovely. I know that. I like them myself. But that couple of feet at the top of your ceiling there is so much more warmer than the rest of your house. So if you're just comfortable and warm and comfortable, that plant up there is probably drying out and roasting alive. So think in terms of lowering the length of the cords on your hanging basket. Try to get it, if you're putting it over a window, try to get it below the top of the window. Don't have it right up here, because you need to be able to get to it easily to sort of feel, are you too dry? And to maybe use something very carefully and water it, or take it off altogether and water it on a table. But they will dry up a lot faster up there, and so will their leaves, and then you've got one problem after another starting to develop. I prefer mine to stay on a tabletop or a shelf, something like that, which is sort of average height, not too high, and then you can just keep an eye on it. But they do need some light, so if you stick them in a shelf and you want them lower down somewhere, the back of that shelf is in shade. This side of the shelf has got some light. So either turn them around regularly or move them a little higher so they can get some light. So that's just about positioning your Maranta and how I do things with mine. Now the Marantas, as I said, they are humidity plants. So they're not crazy about it, but they do like their humidity. They're better off not in your lounge. Your lounge is always a warm place. You have your full sun in and you have your radiators on in the winter. But your kitchen is constantly using water, cooking, washing up, all that stuff. And all that water is going into the air. Even if you've got a fan going over your cooker, you'll still have some moisture going into the air in your kitchen, and they want that. And then also you've got your bathrooms. That's a good place. You've got various holes, drains in your bathroom. The bath, maybe a bidet, a shower, a sink. So all these areas are releasing little bits of moisture into the atmosphere, even if you're not running the tap. So it all goes to help these plants not dry out too much. And I would say soil. Now, repotting is the usual way. Either the plant has obviously got a little bit too big in that pot and you think, oh dear, I better have a look at it. You look at it, it's a bit thick, a bit bound. it needs repotting. Or you've gone a couple of years and you think, oh dear, 2 years, that's it. So it's about 1 to 2 years. Judge the size of it and that sort of thing. I mean, don't keep repotting, you know, don't do that. There are some people that actually go mad about repotting because they think that they're continually giving the plant fresh nutrients in the soil, but you know, it isn't really the way. I mean, you can always sprinkle in the spring. If you're not going to repot, you can sprinkle a bit of fresh soil around the top because they do kind of go down like brown sugar, you know, the soil kind of goes down. So in the spring you could sprinkle a little bit of fresh soil on if you wanted to, if you're not going to repot it. If you repot it and it's not really root bound, then just repot it in the same pot. Just get rid of some of that soil, not too much, not too heavy on moving the roots around. Just shake a little off and put some fresh soil in and you pot it up that way. If obviously it does need a bigger pot, then it's common sense, just get a bigger pot. Make sure you've got holes underneath. So you want that pot to be able to drain into its outer pot. Some people use plastic pots that are orchid pots, which have some slits down the sides or little holes, in the hope that maybe some air might help to go and circulate into the soil. I'm not so sure that it will actually do that, but you could do that. Also, when you do use one of those types of pots, you can lift it, you can sort of see where the moisture level is a little bit more, you know, it looks darker down here, lighter up there, oh, it needs a drink, you know, something like that. So you can do that. But other than that, just repot as normal, once or twice a year, depending on how you think your plant has grown. Now soil. Soil is very important. Ordinary house soil, good quality. There will probably be little bits of perlite in that soil. You need to add more. You need to add more. So if you've got a pot, something like that, I would get a good scoop, you know, a good handful, but don't put perlite in your hands because perlite has a dust which is not very good for you. So very carefully just use a scoop of some kind, about the size of a palmful, and add that to your soil and very gently move it around so that dust doesn't get into your chest because you do not need that. But they love perlite, so perlite is really good. It really does help to make little spaces between the perlite, and therefore the soil isn't clogging up in the pot, because soil can clog, and just like brown sugar, it can soften right down, and so what happens is the roots get compressed and they can't breathe. So if you put perlite in, you will have little spaces between the perlite. It's just not enough perlite in the normal bags of soil, so I would definitely, as I say, add more. And that's it. All you have to do is that. And you'll find then, and don't press it down. When you repot, just tap very, very gently, give it a shake, that kind of thing. Do not push it down. Over time, it's going to do the brown sugar thing. It's just going to settle down anyway. And your perlite will do its job if it's in there. And that's going to really help those roots. It's really, really important. Also, it helps for the drainage. Should you give it a bit too much, or you give it some water and your partner or someone in the family doesn't realise you've done it, sees it and thinks, oh gosh, it needs water, and they give it water, at least the perlite will help drain it. So it's really important, the perlite. Apart from that, fertigate. I fertigate, that's fertilisation. Fertilisation, now you can do it once a month, once every 6 weeks if you want to. But what I tend to do is work out what the fertiliser is for 6 weeks. So if it's a teaspoonful for 6 weeks, according to the packet, then you can see that you've got to break up that teaspoon into 6 little tiny dots. And you put those little dots in your water, and you know, say half a cupful or something like that, just a little dot, and that you use some of that water, not all of it, to water your plant once a week. And that way it has this tiny bit of nutriment that is going in there each week. And you can do this all through the winter as well, or you could do it every other week with the winter time, because a lot of people like to rest their plants during the winter, but you've got to remember that they are still growing. It might be very, very slowly, but they're still growing. They still need to get some sort of food from their environment. And so I use Fertigate. I do that all the time with all of my plants now. I used to do it with just a few, but I do it with all of them now. And I find it works really well, especially if you've got flowering plants, because flowering plants, people think, oh, I've got to give them extra feed for the flowering season. Well, if they should forget that, if they just forget, that plant hasn't had a boost. So if you are fertigating, it's getting a very slight little boost every week, and it just keeps bobbing along. It'll just naturally flower on its own when it needs to. So, you know, fertigation is really good. Also helps keep all the colours in your leaves that you're enjoying so much in your plant. So that's fertigation. I use a seaweed based fertilizer, or I use any houseplant feed will do. I like seaweed though, because it's got that little bit more richness for the leaves and this sort of a thing, and the strength. So you could look around, see what you can find here and there. The other thing is worm castings. Worm castings is really good. It's very good. It's very feeding for plants. So you could put just a little teaspoon. You know, you could do this like once every couple of months, or just in the spring and then the start of summer. You don't really need to do it in the winter time so much, but in the spring and the summer, when they're really getting going and they're really growing and they're bringing all this greenery into the world, then put a little bit of worm castings and just gently move it into your soil and water it when you water it, and that will really help with all plants, not just your Marantas. So I think we've covered quite a bit here. Now, pests unfortunately are pests, and they will be a problem to you. Not all the time. I've had Marantas for years and had no problem. And then this year one of them got a bit too close to some mealybugs and I had that problem. So just be careful with your plants. Don't let them get too close to each other, because they do communicate through the leaves. And these pests, they know where the other next vital piece of dinner is, and they will just crawl along and get in there, even if they don't fly. So just keep it in mind. With this summer that we've just had, we had 3 or 4 heat waves in the space of about 5 weeks in England, and it's not normal for us. And this heat wave released dormant eggs in some of the soils of our plants. So I would just keep that in mind, that you know that you don't take any risks. Just keep them a little bit of a distance away from other things. And with pests, alcohol rubbing oil, rubbing alcohol is very good. But I would be very careful. Only use about 1/4 strength and 3/4 water in your jug. So measure it carefully. If you go a little bit above that, you do risk burning the leaves. So you do have to be a bit careful with that. And when we're talking about burning leaves, there's another thing to remember. I have said this in many of my videos. Always use water softener in your water. You can get some from pet shops that they use for fish in aquariums. You can just use that. Just a drop or 2 in a gallon will be enough. and you know, it really will make a difference. It will stop all this brown edging straight away. It really will. So if you don't want brown edging, water softener and a humid environment, bathroom or kitchen. So keep that in mind, because they do suffer from that if you forget. Now, what else can I tell you? I like to look after my Marantas quite a lot. I like to put them some in front and some on something high. Now here I've just got like a low candlestick, but you can get high candlesticks. They look very attractive, they don't cost very much, and they will lift your Maranta up. All those cascading leaves will come down, and maybe you'll have something else below it or another Maranta. That's just a way of styling. It's just a moment's thought in the middle of what I was saying. But that can be a nice thing, you know, on the corner of a bath. You can put it on an east-facing windowsill, because they don't get full-on sun, do they? So that is a possibility. But I don't put them on the other west or south windowsills. It's just not worth the risk. So you can also use, with your alcohol, you just spray the leaves and the stems. If you think that you have something, you can wipe them off afterwards. You can spray them another time with a neem oil spray, which is really good, because the alcohol will kill on impact and will be wiped away, but you could miss something. So if you did an alcohol spray first, then give it a few days, then come in with your neem oil and neem oil spray. Now, neem oil will not do anything to the plant, but it stays on the leaves longer. It helps to make them look a bit shiny, and it gets in there into your stems, and it will kill the bugs. If there's anything coming out of the soil, any eggs released, they come up and they will be killed off as soon as they bite in to the plant. It's the leaves. So neem oil is a good thing. You know, it's often spoken about and people talk about other things, but it is a good thing. And in combination with something else, such as you can use if you get a very bad infestation with something and you're not winning, then try something like a systemic insect killer, because that can help. It can really help. But I would, if you were in that state, I would look at thinking about washing off roots and starting again with fresh soil and doing your sprays. You know, think in terms of that and keeping away from your other plants. But these plants generally are good. They are generally very good. So they're not, you know, the sort of thing that every bug in the world is going to go straight to it. So I really think that they're a lovely houseplant to have. Now, one of the things with these is that it gets a bit annoying. They start off nice and bushy and you love them, and they're growing nicely and the leaves are getting bigger and all of this, but after a while the stems start to grow. So I have a method of dealing with that in another video that I've done, which I'll put up here for you, so that you can go to the link and have a look at that, because that really helps you. It helps you with propagation, and it helps you cope with that kind of problem, because they can get very leggy and then just have a few leaves at the bottom, and then you've lost that lovely lush rich look. So I hope that's helped you today with your Marantas, and I hope you enjoy your Marantas all the time. And I'll say bye now until the next video. Bye. And if you have any problems, please write down in the comments. I'll try and get back to you. Thank you. Bye.